everyone. Oh, there we go. I'm on now. Welcome to the Net International Church at the Net. Thank you. So get your Bibles ready, get your pens ready, get your heart ready, most of all. We need to get your heart ready to receive what God has in store for the next 2 nights. Now, those of you that are with us on our Net Nation, on Facebook, YouTube, on the air with us, in your homes, your bedrooms, and your living rooms, this is it. Don't let a family member miss this tonight. Grab all your family members, pull them in the room. Let's sit in the room together. Let's get in the dining room together. Also, go ahead and share, tag and share. You need to share this party with your relatives in Seattle, your relatives in California, your relatives in Texas. You need to share this tonight. Do not let anyone miss this. They will be so mad at you. So this is your chance to get everyone involved, to hear straight from two people that have been anointed and appointed to deal with mental health. Tonight is the night of burnout. Who is it that literally has been struggling this week, but I don't know if I can handle another issue? I don't know if I can make it another step further. And please don't anybody ask me to do anything else. Who is it that God has tailor-made tonight for? Let's go into the Word of God. In the book of Matthew, to kick this off, I think this is a beautiful way to start. 11th chapter of Matthew, 28th verse. Come to me, all of you who are wearied and burdened down, and I will give you rest. God even goes a little further. Are you ready? He says, take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest. Rest, not just physical rest. You'll find rest for your soul, mental rest. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. Wow. The Word of God to help us with burnout and stress. You're in the hands of Dr. and Dr. and Dr. and Dr. and Dr. Alexander's. God, we're blessed tonight. Any questions? Please send in your questions through the comments. Any comments, send them in to us. They're going to be with us next week as well. So if your question doesn't get dealt with tonight, send it in so they can prepare for it next week. And I know the question doesn't have to be about you personally. It could be about your best friend. We know who your best friend is.
All right, good afternoon, everybody, or good evening. How are you? Good, good. Well, we just want to start off, like Pastor mentioned, I'm Dr. Alexander, Darren Alexander, and my lovely wife is Dr. Lorna Mangone Alexander. And we've been blessed by God for over the past 20 years to be able to deliver counseling services to individuals and their families. things. And so this was a great opportunity for us to be able to come out and just share what we have learned mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally, and what it takes for all of us to move forward to have a balanced life, because that's what it's all about. It's not just about waking up every morning and going to work. Some of us work to live and others live to work. But what we have to do is find that balance between the two. And what we're going to be talking about tonight is dealing with stress and burnout, because that's going to open the door for next week for us to be able to come back out and talk about anxiety and depression, because they all come together. And most of us, I think it's safe to say that with stress and burnout is normally what starts the chain reaction. Something happened or transitioned in our life that caused us to be frustrated, upset, angry, depressed, or stressed out. And some of it is also self-induced when we talk about burnout, because some of us just keep pushing ourselves until we either end up in the hospital, or either someone in our family ends up telling us, hey, if you keep going like this, you're going to end up killing yourself. And research shows that stress and anxieties can kill you. It will kill you eventually. And if it doesn't, you're going to go through so much mentally, physically, and emotionally that it's going to tear you down and separate you from friends and family. And that's what we hope to gain tonight, that we want to be able to share some things with you guys that will help you recognize stress and depression. Thank you, sir. All right, next slide, please. Thank you. Yes, and if you notice this first slide, it says you manage your life before it manages you, because that's exactly what can happen, what most of us go through.
So, in looking at this particular slide, you notice that it says manage your life before it manages you, and you see it's a ripple effect. You may have one certain thing going on, and it goes over into other aspects of your life, your social life, your career, your relationships, your parenting, your physical. So the stress and burnout is real, and how it can manifest in so many different ways. And that's what we wanted to talk about. We wanted to look at recognizing some of the impact that stress and burnout has and the effects. Because sometimes we don't realize that we're putting it on ourselves and not understanding how we're doing it, or maybe why we're even doing it. So we wanted to recognize the impact it has on us and just identify some of the risks, and then give you, wrap it up with just some strategies to help you manage your stress so you don't go on to burnout.
Right, and when we look at managing our life, and I know some of us, have you met people that just wake up angry? Yeah, we all, I think, have met them people that just wake up angry. And that means that their minds never shut off the day before. So, which in psychology, we call that a carryover. So what they're doing is carrying over that same problem from the day before and sleeping on it, which their mind doesn't shut off, so it's been going all night. So now they wake up angry the next day. So just imagine the ripple effect of that decision to wake up angry, because now it affects everyone who's in that household that morning. Because whether we believe it or not, the kids see it, the grandmother see it, the wife is going to see it, and then if you're working, by the time you get to work, your coworkers are going to see it. So people are going to recognize that it's only 8:30 in the morning and this individual is coming through the door already stressed, frustrated, angry. And so what that tells us is that for the remainder of that day, chances are that person is going to be struggling. Now, even though that we have crossed some of those people, how many of you out there and in here have actually walked up to somebody because you could see their nonverbals, and you walked up to them and said, hey, hope you have a good day. Everything is going to be all right tonight, or today. And even though you said that, they just mumbled or groaned, or they just kept walking, just like you didn't even exist. And those are the people that you don't want to give up on. Those are the ones that you want to go back to, even if it's 10, 15 minutes later, and let them know, hey, I'm here for you. Or if there's something you need to talk about, hey, just let me know. If I can't answer the question, I can get you someone that can. But that's what we want to do. Next slide, please. Okay, great, thank you. And so when we look at this slide, it talks about a balanced life. And when we look at a balanced life, well, first let me just speak on what the balanced life is talking about. When we talk about mental health problems, and like the slide says, I'm not going to assault nobody's intelligence and read everything word for word, but to summarize, is basically letting us know that mental health problems often result from stress, and that burnout may occur as you endure chronic or prolonged stress, unrealistic expectations, and exceed your own limits. Being overworked, overwhelmed, overloaded can cause damage to your health, home life, and happiness. And when we talk about a balanced life, even if you can get up in the morning, thank God for that. Most people spend so much time, and I won't say most people, but I'll say often, people spend so much time just complaining every day instead of giving God the praise and the glory for what they've been able to do that day. Because some of us, even if we hadn't been able to walk that well, do you know there are people that's not walking at all? And those are the things that I think we forget as life goes on. Some people will say, I just can't stand this job. I don't even want to go today. But there's some people that don't even have a job. And so even though there's something going wrong at that job, in order to have that balanced life, you have to be able to find the problem. What's going on? Because maybe it's something we need to change with ourselves. Now, maybe it is something that you may need to change with a supervisor or someone like that, but you have to go through the proper channels, talking about it, internal office conflict. That's not going to work. That's not what's going to get it done.
Well, Dr. Alexander, I'd like to also talk about, let's just understand a little bit about stress. We have stress. That's in our life. Mm-hmm. It comes to us day in and day out, and sometimes in certain moments, sometimes in certain days. But just being able to understand what stress is important. And really what it is, it's just an emotional and a behavioral and a physical response to, sometimes it might be to a real event, or it might be to something that's imagined. Something we might bring on those certain things that are not real. And we imagine it, and it causes us stress.
And it's real to you.
Right, yeah. And so stress, just like, there's always positive and negative things when it comes to certain aspects. And stress can have a positive aspect, and it can have a negative aspect. How many of you guys work better under stress? Yeah. So there's a positive aspect that. So you want to, sometimes individuals, their performance is much better under stress.
Next slide, please.
They may feel more motivated and feel more energized. But then there's that negative aspect of stress when you feel overwhelmed and you're just paralyzed. So there's both a positive and negative.
Yep, and when we look at, like this next slide when it's talking about staying positive helps, because it does. We can spend a lot of time staying in the negative, but staying positive is going to help you mentally, physically, and emotionally. Negativity just carries so much weight, and it takes a lot to get through that, especially if you don't have a good support system. But when we talk about strategies for staying positive, when you look at some of these things on the checklist, you've heard some of this stuff before, but how many of us have seen it and heard it before but ignored it? That's the thing. There's so much information out there that talks about burnout and stress, but you may not agree with everything on the list, or everything on the list may not apply to you, but you have to be able to pull 1, 2, 3 of those things that you can grab a hold to and say, yes, this is what I need to work on. Because the only one that's going to be able to find that balance and help you get out of that stress and that burnout is you. You know, you are the main source. You are the one. You know, you might have been the problem, but you're also the cure. And that's why we have to move forward.
So, you know, Dr. Alexander, some individuals say, how do I stay positive?
Mm-hmm.
I've got all this stuff going on. I've got bills coming. My relationship is getting me down. I can't find a decent job. I feel disrespected at work. How do I stay positive? Well, sometimes staying positive is a mindset. And so if you're not used to it, we call it change talk. How do I change the way I talk? You can have a certain a scenario and look at it 2 different ways. So staying positive starts, like Dr. Alexander, starts from within, but being able to look at different things. If you want a positive aspect, we might have to change certain things in our behavior. So let's start. I usually tell a lot of my clients is, how do you speak in terms of when you're around individuals? Do you always say can't, won't, not happening? Listen to the way you speak. Sometimes the way you speak has an effect on your outlook. So look, when we're looking at staying positive helps us, instead of saying I can't do it, saying not right now. Or yes I can, maybe later. Or yes I can, I just need help.
Absolutely. And a lot of times we also want to focus on what you have instead of what you don't have. So many of us, we want to live like the next person, or thinking that we have to have what other people have. Well, what a lot of people aren't sharing with you, with a lot of those haves come problems. You know, so that's what they're not sharing with you. And but when we look at that, put yourself in that mindset of, I'm going to do what I need to do for me and my family right now. Those other things will come. But I know people to this day that have told me, you know what, I deserve a new car. And they actually went out and bought a new car, then called me 2 months later saying, I need to borrow some money. I said, no, how do you do that? You know, because you needed a car, but did you have to have it right then? You know, but because their neighbor 3 doors down got one, they got one. And guess what? They added more stress onto their plate. Because now, next slides, please. Because now, not only do you have to deal with the decision you made, now you have to also be able to explain to your family that, hey, we can't do X, Y, and Z. Because now that $500, $600, $700, $800, and all of us in here know one of the biggest triggers of stress is finances. You know, finances is still one of the biggest ones that attacks all of us. Which one? Okay. And so, and she's on the right slide, thank you. And so when we look at understanding stress, for most of us out there, we know what stress means and what it is. But here, I just want to read a small portion. It says, stress is a biological, emotional, behavioral, and social response to deal or imagine events. And when anxiety and stress are low, motivation and performance level remain low as well. And as stress and anxieties go up, performance level also increases. And I think Dr. Lorna was mentioning earlier, when we look at that stress can be positive and it can also be negative. Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you, sir. And so when Dr. Lorna was talking about the stress levels being positive and negative, I think what we fail to see is that at certain points in our life, that yes, we wake up energized, we're motivated, we feel like we can conquer the world. But then at the same time, we get overwhelmed. We get frustrated. And then you see a decline to where for some of us, it paralyzes us. It even gets us to the point to those things that you used to enjoy doing, you don't even want to do them anymore. And people, as far as like sometimes you'll say, oh yeah, I'm gonna go over to sister so and so's house or brother so and so's house, but now you don't even want to do that anymore because you have burned yourself out so much. And I thought I work a lot, but I've met people that have 2 and 3 jobs, and then when you ask them, well, why are you working like 2 8-hour shifts? Who does that? But they say, hey, I got to pay bills, I got to do this, and I got to do that. But what you really see that there's more deeper issues going on and that they're not talking about because stress and anxieties and frustration, burnout, it attacks the home a lot. And I think all of us can agree with that.
So when you talk about that it attacks the home, knowing that stress can be a ripple effect. You may have one. Dr. Alexander talked about finances. We may have someone who is struggling financially. And when you're struggling in any aspect, there's that emotional piece where you feel overwhelmed. And some individuals, when we're looking at coping, healthy or unhealthy coping strategies, when someone is stressed, they may want a quick release or a quick relief. And that can have a ripple effect. Say, for example, I'll just use a scenario. You might have an individual, there might be finances going on. They want to get some type of relief and maybe start drinking. And then there's a ripple effect. Then it might affect your relationships. Maybe it's not drinking. Maybe that financial stress causes us to have a lot of anger. And anger, I always say it's at the tip of the iceberg. Beneath the surface is a lot of emotional things that are going on. Anger can look like stress. Anger can look like grief. Anger can look like despair. Anger can look like disrespect. But all of these things, being able to understand and recognize what your stress level is key. And we going on talking about some of the common high stress situations. And some individuals may not know it. This might be their norm. We might think, oh, this is my normal. And they're always operating at level 10. And that's been their normal. But being able to understand and identify common high stress situations, moving. And you remember that it could be acute or it could be chronic. And there's a difference. So an acute means, acute stress means it's just for a short period of time. I'm going through this. My daughter's getting married. Oh, it's so stressful. But it's for a short period of time. Then it could be chronic, meaning it's for long periods of time. And when you have that, the chronic stress levels that for long periods of time, it could affect us physically, right? So chronic stress can lead to heart problems, anxiety disorders, skin diseases, sleep disorders, depression, a weakened immune system, substance use, poor diet and exercise. That's when it's chronic, when it's just been ongoing. But if it's acute, where it's just here and there, you can suffer from migraines, headaches. Some individuals do nail biting, their behavior changes. Some people start to grind their teeth. So being able to recognize some of the things that might be going on with you, emotionally, you could be irritable. You get angry quickly. For some individuals, you might have memory problems. So being able to recognize some of the symptoms of stress is important because that gives us some type of baseline. Said, hold up, I need to do something. I need to take care of me. Because if we don't take care of ourselves first,
Next slide, please.
if we don't take care of ourselves first, like again, it filters over to your relationships, to your parenting, to maybe your job, how you we call it emotional intelligence, how you also treat other people, and how do you problem solve. So when you're stressed, it's much harder for you to problem solve and to resolve conflict.
Right, absolutely. And we also have to look at, and Dr. Lorna, she said it throughout her discussion too, is what is causing it. We have to look at what is not only the warning signs, but also what are the triggers, what's triggering, what are the signs, what are the symptoms. And if we look deeply, we know that there are several things that can be causing it. Next slide, please. So one of the things that I want people to look at, and you have to be honest with yourself, because if you're not honest with yourself, you can't always say that somebody else is causing you stress. We can't say that every day. Now, that may be true in some situations, but every single day, that can't be the situation. And just to give you an example, there's some people that's been married 3 or 4 times, and you ask them, well, what happened? Oh, they failed to do what they were supposed to do. I caught them in too many lies. All 4 of them? So what did you do? What are some things that you have to change and work on? Because, some of us have bad luck, but I can assure you that out of 4 marriages, all of them couldn't have been bad and their fault. You had something to do with it. Maybe you contributed to some of the stress, the anxiety, and the burnout. But one thing we have to do as individuals is be honest with ourselves and tell yourself what you need to change. Positive self-talk is okay. Tell yourself what you need to change. If you know that you're having problems in the household, step up to the plate and say, hey, I apologize. My attitude is bad. I need to work on some things. I need to get some counseling. If you know that you just quit a job because you were upset, you can't come home and bring that anger to your family and then look at your wife or look at your children and say, hey, y'all need to work. Or either look at your wife and say, you need to start working, because everything was fine till you quit your job. So there are other signs and symptoms and what else is going on with us. And we're going to get into this discussion when we talk about anxiety and depression as well. But I just wanted to mention it briefly here that in some cases it might be to where, next slide please, in some cases it may be to where medication might come into play. So I'm not saying in every situation an individual is going to need medication. We all know that medication often treats the symptoms, but it don't fix the problem. And that's what, I like for people to know as well. But the medication is great as long as you're following what your doctors asked you, told you how to use it and what to do. But in some cases, people may think that they need medication and they really don't. And so we have to have all those things balancing out too.
I was going to talk about something, but I think we're going to cover it later. But if we have partners, we have best friends, we have families. They know and they can tell when something's going on. Rely on those individuals or be able to recognize when they're feeling stressed. If you can say, hey, what can I do just to take that little burden off? And that could relieve a whole lot. So rely on each other, and then also be able to recognize when your significant other or when your child or someone at work is stressed. That might be your key to back off, because being able to pile one more thing onto that individual, things can tend to escalate when it doesn't need to be. But that person might also need a break. My husband does that all the time. When he sees I'm high strung or stressed, what do you tell me?
I leave. No, I'm joking. What I always tell her is just to breathe. I said, relax. I said, A problem is only as big as we make it, and which I truly believe in. A problem is only as big as we make it. If I can't make a car payment, I can call 10 people and moan and groan and complain. I can call the dealership and holler at them and say all these nasty words, or I can say, you know what, I will get out of this. I'm going to put a plan together to make this payment, make it happen. Because what we don't realize is that we often work ourselves up. We work ourselves up by stressing over some of the things that we can't even control.
That's what I talked about, real or perceived. Sometimes we call it, some individuals call it truth telling. Well, this is going to happen, then this is going to happen. The first thing hadn't even happened, and we start working ourselves up and get even more stressed.
Absolutely. And when we look at the definition of burnout, doing too much with too little for too long. And I think a lot of us are in that situation and are put ourselves in that category. Doing too much with too little for too long. And then it weighs on you. It weighs on you. Just think about, if you want to see how much it weighs on you, just think about extend your arms out, for those of you at home, and practice it later. Extend your arms out, and every time you have a complaint, ask a family member to stick a book on your hand. Every time. And see how long your arms are going to stay up. How many books will it take? Maybe 2? Maybe 3 for some of us? I mean, if you've been working out, I'll give you 6, But eventually, that arm is going to fall, isn't it? It's going to push lower and lower until you just say, I can't do it. I can't do it anymore. So when we look at that, that's exactly how we all look at it when we talk about our families and stuff. There comes a point in time when families, friends, co-workers, pastors, a lot of people just will get to the point to where they say, I'm working harder at this than you are. I have to see something from you. How do you want this stress to stop? How are you going to get out of this burnout?
For a lot of my families, when we talk about, with parents, whether you're married or you're single, parenting is hard. And even though your kids are grown, sometimes parenting is even harder.
Next slide, please.
So I always look at stress for us as parents as a teachable moment. I try to look at different things as a teachable moment. So when we are encountering stress, kids are going to learn from us. How do we manage stress? Are we throwing things? Are we yelling? Are we secluding ourselves? So instead of, how do we ease that burden? So why not rely on our loved ones and say, look, because our kids have to know we're human and that we falter, but we know how to get back up, and we help with each other in that process. So for my parents, I said, ask your kids, if you got a lot of things going on in the household, let them help out. Say, look, mommy's got a lot of stuff going on, and when we're all done, let's do X, Y, and Z. So they see a positive outcome. And as they come, not only are you relieving your stress, you're teaching them about community, you're teaching them about empathy, you're teaching them about hard work, and you're teaching them that we're family, and if things are going wrong or things are going bad, we chip in and we help so we can get to the next level. So I tend to try to look at things as a teachable moment. How can I teach my children when I'm down or things are going wrong? What can we do to pull together so they can learn from adversity and they learn resiliency?
And also, and Dr. Lorna said it best here, is we have to, as part of finding that balance, is we also have to know when to take that break. And that's important. And I use pastors for an example, not only my pastor, but all the pastors out there. People don't understand a lot that pastors are counselors, social workers. husbands, wives, they do it all, but also they're human. And pastors can only absorb but so much. And so when I look at my role as a therapist and a doctor and all the clients I come in contact with, it still doesn't compare to the amount of people that pastors, provide discussions with, and encouragement, and counseling, and just looking over their whole congregation, visiting hospitals, doing charity events. I mean, there's just so much on and on. And I know my pastor does this, and I hope some other pastors out there do the same thing, but still, they make enough time to speak with you. And that's, what we have to look at, that if a pastor who has a million things going on, that you call them and they will still pick that phone up, or you say, can I speak with you after church right quick? And they stop and talk to you. That tells you right there where their heart is. But also, we have to understand that they're human beings too. So don't get frustrated and upset if you say, well, I need to talk to my pastor right now after church, and the pastor has so much going on, and he says, well, if you just get with your deacon or brother, so now you mad for the whole day. Now all of the 20 good things the pastor has done for you, because he didn't give you 5 minutes, now your whole attitude done changed. Now everything in the service, you done missed that.
So we call that, cognitive distortions.
Absolutely.
Cognitive distortions is what we call is messed up thinking, or you call it sinking thinking.
Right.
And what Dr. Alexander, one of those cognitive distortions is discounting the positives, meaning there's so many things that are going on in your life that's right, but you focus on the negative, and it just diminishes all the other things that are going on right in your life. So we tend to look at some of those things. We call it cognitive distortions.
Absolutely. Next slide, please. And when we look at the impact and the effects of burnout, I want to encourage everybody that when you need to take a break, you take that break. And I'm not saying that you always have to go out of town and go on vacation and travel. What I mean is your 1 day off or your 2 days off, if you decide not to do anything, don't do it, because that's part of mental wellness. If me and my wife, Dr. Lorna, if we at least 2 months, we'd go somewhere for just 3 days and shut everything off. Because if we're not right, then we can't be any good for you guys. So we know what it takes to get rejuvenated and to keep our mind clear as well, because we also absorb people's problems for 8 to 10 hours a day. So when we do that, we have to also take a step back and say, you know what, for these 2 days, let's free our mind. And I encourage everyone to take that day off. A day off means a day off. Before it used to be our day off was Sunday. That was guaranteed. Go to church, go home and get something to eat, just relax. But now on Sundays, that's not the case. We go to church, we go home, we cutting grass, we hanging cabinets, or we doing tile. I mean, we trying to play catch up. But we have to be able to get that time of rest, because sleep, which I found out, personally, because a few years ago, for those of you who don't know, I had an eye stroke, and I didn't even know what an eye stroke was, but it was because my stress level was so high and lack of sleep, is that I had a stroke in my right eye, and which paralyzed that eye to enough to where it caused me to lose some vision. And 80% of that.
That's when I started looking better to him.
Yeah. Amen. Praise the Lord. But 80% of that was, my doctor said, was from lack of sleep and stress. And that job stress was, I won't mention what job because they might be watching, and they might need me one day, so I ain't gonna mention what job, but that job stress was definitely a big piece. And I tell people all the time that with stress and burnout, if you're working, technically you're married to that job, because most of us spend more time on the job than we spend at home. So if you can't get up every day and love going to that workplace, then something's wrong, because you're going to be doing that for most of us for what, 20 years? And nowadays, I think it's very rare. I don't know actually the statistics, but more and more people are not even staying on a job 30 years no more and retiring. Those of us who were able to retire, that says a lot about us. But a lot of people can't even do that anymore because they don't like going to work every day. And that means it affects us. So please, please, please find that time so that you can have your mental wellness and just wind down. You got to put that in your schedule.
And then when you talk about going to a job or an event or someplace that you may not enjoy.
Next slide, please.
I use a lot of self-talk. So being able to talk yourself saying, I'm going to have a great day. I'm not going to let anybody steal my joy. So in our office, we talk about attitudes a lot. We have a sign in our office that says, attitudes are contagious. Is yours worth catching?
And we make sure everybody read it coming through the door.
So it gives you a certain type of perspective. And then for my families, I try to switch it around when we're talking about self-talk, and when we find ourselves so negative, constantly talking about negative and all the stress. And I turn it around. I said, what if your son or daughter came to you with that same problem? What would you tell them? I'd uplift them. I'd tell them to change their attitude. All the things that the parent needs to do. These are different advices that they would give to their children. So we sometimes have to listen to what we tell our children, because those are things that we need to hear for ourselves.
And for a lot of us, when we look at that balance and we are trying to set that example in our households, remember that when your children, when your spouses, when they are stressed out and you ask them and you say, why didn't you come to me? Because you were angry. And so we also have to look at what we're giving off. Because if you're already upset and you're stressed and you're frustrated, that child is not going to come to you to make you more upset. To them, and I've learned this from children just providing counseling over the years, I would ask them, why didn't you go to your mother? Why didn't you go to your father? Because they were arguing a half hour before that. So I wasn't going to go to them and have them angry and frustrated again. And then when you talk to some families, children often think that they're part of the problem, and so they get upset because, like, well, if it wasn't my birthday, then my mom could have got her car fixed. They may not ever tell you, but that's what they believe. Why? Is because they see what goes on in that household all the time. And so we have to do a better job too as individuals, communicating with our families. And one thing that I used to enjoy is having weekly meetings with my family. And we stopped doing a lot of things that we were taught to do by our parents and grandparents. And you guys know this because it was one time that, dinner time, the TV was off. No cell phones, no Twitter, Instagram, and all this stuff. All that was put away, and you actually had dinner with your family and you talked, and it was healthier back then, because now people were having discussion about how was your day. How many of us ask each other that anymore? How was your day? So those are some of the small things that can just help us reduce the anxiety and stress and try to help us find a balance. And, oh, good, you got the slide. So when we're looking at finding a balance, when you look at number 1 here, and it says, keep love and work balance, that is made easier if you work for those you love and love your work. And we talked about that earlier. That has to be a major part of your life, because you're married to that job. And if you have children, you're spending 8 hours on the job. And if you're coming home and you're helping your children with their homework or what have you for a couple of hours, you're probably looking at your spouse's face right before dinner, and then you're going to sleep. And then your routine starts over again.
It says keep love and work balance. And if you see that at work there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of negativity, why not change the atmosphere by starting with yourself? You can change that whole work dynamic just by changing your outlook.
And I always tell people one of my favorite things, and this number 2, is set priorities and goals. And remember, goals can be short. They don't have to be huge goals. I mean, I tell people all the time, if you were riding a moped, 2 months ago, and your goal is to have a car within the next 3 months, that is a good goal to have. If you have a small goal of, I'm trying to get some work done in my house, I can't do the whole thing, but if I can just get this kitchen area done, hey, that's still a goal, and that's a short-term goal. Because what happens a lot of times in households is we get frustrated when we set these big goals and we never reach them, and that frustrates us more than anything. But when we accomplish something, don't that make you feel a lot better? It makes us feel a lot better when we accomplish something, even if it's small and a short-term goal. But when you accomplish it, you feel so much better.
So, Dr. Alexander, you mentioned about setting priorities and goals. Sometimes we have self-defeating behaviors and we don't even realize it. When we have individuals who say, I'm this age and I'm not where I need to be, I'm not where I want to be. Where do you want to be? I don't know. So how do you know? How are you frustrated when you don't even know what you want to be? Or they may say, my time management is terrible. I can't get anything done. So tell me about your day. They talk about all the different individuals that they're helping. So we talk about setting priorities and goals and, limiting your duties. There are boundary issues. Sometimes individuals don't know how to set boundaries, and it's affecting their priorities, it's affecting their goals. And when I say, what do you mean boundaries? Boundaries is not a bad thing. Boundaries is about self-respect, respecting me, and then the other person respecting you as well. So setting boundaries, say for example an individual doesn't have time. They're so stressed for time. They're doing all these other things because they don't know how to say no. They want to take on more. They may feel like if I don't do this, people will look down on me, or I need to look good. But although I'm stressed, so being able to have self-care and set your boundaries is really about taking care of yourself.
And it's okay to say no. It is okay to say no. Most of us, or the people I associate myself with, have wonderful hearts, and they will bend over backwards to help somebody. But there are times when you have to say no to help yourself, just to heal for yourself. And like number 3 said, we got to limit our duties as well. And when I say saying no, that doesn't mean be rude and nasty. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, if you know that you have a full plate, that you tell somebody, hey, I'm sorry I can't help you this week, but what about next week? And I'll use our pastor for an example, and for other pastors out there, deacons and ministers, they all have roles that they have to do every week. And so when they ask us as members to do something, they're not just picking you to do it because they want to harass you. They have to spread those duties around because they can't do everything. There is no way. And one thing that we forget as a body, and I'm not saying every church, but I'm saying a lot of churches, one thing that we forget for our members, members forget, not the head, but most members forget, is that if you do just a little bit, then that's part of the puzzle, and it helps take care of a lot of things. So if one of us if I just do my part, and she does her part and he does his part, guess what? Your pastors don't have to do as much, and then their jobs are pretty much done, because now they have the confidence that their members are stepping up to the plate and can actually carry on these duties. But guess what? Some pastors, if they see where members are frustrated when they ask them to do things, they will try to do it themselves anyway. And that's not what we want. We want our pastors and our ministers and our deacons to be able to do the roles that they were called to do, and that the rest of us can just pitch in where we can to help everything else run smooth. And I mentioned counseling when I say this for stress and burnout, because one pastor's protocol may be, hey, start with your deacon. And then if the deacon feels like they can't handle it, then the deacon may talk to the minister, and then the minister may say, hey, this is something for the pastors. And the pastors may say, hey, now we will, look for an outside referral or call in me or Dr. Lorna or somebody. But sometimes it can be done on the front end. And we have stopped it right then because all of us are doing what we were called to do. So, keep an open mind when people ask for your help, and know that they're not always bothering you. But if you cannot do it, try to help them find a solution. Next slide, please. And I think one thing that Dr. Lorna hit on, she hit on several things, but finding that balance and recognizing our own destructive behaviors, to me, is key. Some of us continue to do the same thing over and over again. We know what's causing the stress and burnout, but we keep doing it, and as long as you keep doing it, things are not going to change. Just like I know somebody who's allergic to shrimp, but they keep eating the shrimp because it's good and they like it. But they know every time they eat it, their feet swell up. But that don't stop them. And so those are some of the things that we have to look at, is that when we recognize what's causing it, we have to have a plan in place to stop it, and at least have a plan in place to deal with it. And when we recognize our own destructive behaviors, what we're doing is being able to recognize the things ourselves that's pulling us down. And when we recognize those things that's pulling us down, then we can change it, And when we say our destructive behaviors, and we also call it self-defeating behaviors, because sometimes it's our own attitude, our own stress that's holding us back. And that's what's causing us to make these poor choices and unhealthy decisions.
Another tip is sleep. And you guys heard a lot about the different studies. And here it says, lack of sleep is really the primary cause of burnout. Dr. Alexander mentioned about his lack of sleep caused him to have an eye stroke. There's lack of sleep also has an effect on you cognitively, on how you make decisions, how you might treat people. Are you angry? Are you irritable for that lack of sleep? There was also a study, I think that was something done at the Citadel, when individuals who go for long periods of time without sleep, because cognitively you don't think as well, it's almost comparable to having a blood alcohol content that if you were driving under the influence. So sleep is so important. It helps renew our bodies. It helps renew our spirit.
Absolutely. And also, in number 5, it says try something new, intentionally relax. And we talked about that earlier. And number 7 says turn it off. And we talked about that, but that's huge to me, because so often we just keep going and going and going and going. But there comes a time when we have to just turn it off. And part of that is, I believe that some of us think that no one else can do the job as good as we can. So we're scared to leave other people in charge, because you don't want to come back to disaster. But what that also means is that you have to also pull back and trust that the others are going to do the best that they can. And guess what? If they make a mistake, it's okay, because you use that as a teachable moment to go back. Because can you imagine those of you out there and in the church that have your own business? You guys understand exactly what I'm saying, because you can stay at your job, 12 to 14 hours a day. And matter of fact, some of you would like to do that, but in the end, you're going to have to trust in those individuals to get the job and get the work done for you.
Number 8 is laugh at yourself. So here it says, a client once said, if you learn to laugh at yourself, you'll have a lifetime of good material.
Which is true.
And so sometimes we take ourselves too seriously. We're too critical. And then we get too frustrated with ourselves. So learn to laugh at ourselves. Still take your work seriously, but don't take yourself seriously. And then, laughing does reduce a lot of pressure that we're under. So laughter.
And also know your own, and number 9 says it best, know yourself. Most of us, we think we know ourselves, but we really don't, because we don't let ourselves get to that point. It's perfectly fine for me to give another gentleman a compliment. Just say, hey, man, that looks good on you. That suit is sharp, instead of looking at the negative. I know so many people that when you hear them around other people and just listen. If you go to the mall, just listen. Or you go to the grocery store, just listen. And you'll have other people just say, oh, she thinks she look good in them shoes. She know them shoes are too tight. They don't even fit, instead of really saying, hey, she looks nice. It's all right to give people a compliment. It's okay to treat yourself, because these are the things that is going to keep you laughing, keep you smiling, keep you more relaxed. You definitely don't want to go to bed all tense, and frustrated and angry, because your mind will not shut off. And if your mind doesn't shut off, then you have them reoccurring thoughts over and over again. And also be honest with yourself. There are things that you're going to wake up every morning and you're going to thank God for. And God will always give you the signs, and he's going to give you the answer. But you have to listen. You can't listen to just what you want to listen to. That's the good and the bad.
So part of self-care I like to do is every day do a gratitude exercise. And doing that with your family. Every day doing a gratitude exercise. Saying what you are thankful for. So that goes on focusing on the positive. For some individuals, when we do gratitude exercises, it might be in a jar.
Next slide, please.
Saying things that you're thankful for or that you're happy for. So when those days are dark, and when they're lonely, go back to that jar and focus on the positive things that did happen in your life.
And I know we talked about a lot when we look at number 11 and 12, and 13 stands out too when it says get organized, because a lot of stress and frustration and chaos is when people are not organized, and sometimes it stresses us out for the ones that have to look at it. My wife is laughing.
He's talking about me.
It is because if you saw her closet and saw my side, totally different story, night and day, And
he's the organized one.
Yeah, and I get frustrated. Yeah, my side is neat to a T. You can see everything. You know exactly what you're going to get and what you see. But my lovely wife and colleague, she can focus in that she'll know exactly what sweater she's going to get. But if she says, will you go in my closet and get a sweater? I'm like, I'm not going near that closet, But I say that because if I wouldn't laugh at it, I would let it frustrate me. And so her closet not being organized is a trigger. So we all get triggers, and that will frustrate us. So stress and burnout, and that's when I say it can be self-induced, because that's something I can control. But sometimes I would just let it get to me. I mean, really it don't, but I'm just saying if it did get to me, look at how I would be stressed and frustrated over something that I really can't control. I can encourage, but I can't control it.
Now, I wouldn't do this for everyone, but I'll open up a session for you all.
Thank you.
About the closets here at the church with the pastors. Anytime. We're right at that hour.
Absolutely.
So we'll have to continue this on next Wednesday.
And we're at the last slide, too. Next slide, so I can
this
see
is
it.
Great. So
perfect timing, Pastor.
There you go. As he puts this out, we'll let y'all know what's going to happen next week.
And so with this slide here, I'm sorry you can't see the puzzle pieces, but basically it says putting the pieces together to break through anxiety and depression. And I appreciate you guys letting us talk about the stress and the burnout, because we want to use that as that segue into anxiety and depression, because what you're going to see when we talk about that next week is how the stress and the burnout actually flows into the anxiety and depression. And then it causes a spin-off on other mental illnesses that can stem off of that. And so we're going to be talking about all that next week as well.
Yeah, I know we talk a lot about self-care, but I want individuals to know that self-care is not selfish. It's selfless.
Absolutely.
Come on, put your hands together for Dr. and Dr. Alexander. This is what's so wonderful tonight, and I'm so glad that you all are with us. You can still tag and share this even after tonight. There's going to be some family members, even some co-workers, some students, some of your other frat brothers and fraternity sisters that you need to send this to, and make sure that happens. As they were talking tonight and preparing us for anxiety and depression, Lorna, she hit the nail on the head about that self-care is not selfish. God is our creator, and if you go into the book of the beginnings, the bookends, he created heaven, earth, all that in them is, and even created you and I, man, in 6 days. But what did he do on the seventh day? Self-care. Self-care. He's been trying to teach us to be like him, even in that. And then one of the things that I think for us here, we need to stress this so that everyone will understand that anxiety and depression is not abnormal for a Christian. Please do not continue to bang your head that whatever you're feeling is a lack of faith. Anxiety and depression is real because stress and burnout and grief is real. And it's so real that in the book of Isaiah, we'll close here, Isaiah chapter 40, he had to write this. He said, he gives strength to the weary and increases power for the weak. And then I love this. He said, even youth grow tired and weary. The young man stumbles and falls. But, everyone say but. But those who wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up on wings as eagles. They shall run and not faint. They shall not grow weary. They will make it all the way. So be with us on next Wednesday. We'll learn how to run and not faint even when we have and struggle through anxiety and depression. And be with us on Sunday, and we'll learn how to soar in leadership like an eagle.